All right, this is Kenny Soretta, Citywide Tour Commander for the New York City Fire Department. He was in charge of the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993, and he's going to tell you about the World Trade Center and what happened to the New York City Fire Department and the nation. So Kenny's got it. Chief Ken Soretta.
All right, we'll give you a little bit of history. I gotta look at my notes, sorry. Lower Manhattan was a center of trade since the 1600s. Was the Dutch, then the English, and so on. All right. In the 50s, none of this was here. This was known as Radio Road. There were all a bunch of little stores selling radio parts and that, which you guys have no idea about, tubes and stuff. And the Port Authority and New York City decided to build a trade center here. And construction began in 1966, and it was Tower 1 in 72, Tower 2 in 73. It was an entirely different kind of construction. The old building code in New York City, it'll explain why it came down so easy. With a girder construction surrounded by steel, 8-inch thick steel walls, 10-inch thick limestone walls. It was so strong that in 1945, a B-26 flew into the Empire State Building. And it only took out one floor and a little bit on the floor above. That was it. The building was intact. It was damaged 3 years later. 3 months later, it was fully repaired at a cost of $1 million, which would be like $15 million now. The new code, which was partially passed to build this, the exterior walls were the bearing walls. The only columns and cement were in the core where the elevator was and the air conditioning stuff. The girders that were there had just spray-on insulation. They weren't covered in steel, and running the pipes and the electric, half of that came off, which is part of the reason it failed. And when the plane hit, the exterior walls of the bearing walls weren't as strong as the old walls, and shamefully it came down, you know, just came down. And what else? There was usually 50,000 people in these buildings during the day, and we would have lost a lot more, except that it was election day, so a lot of people had off the mornings to vote. And the night before was a Giants-Denver game that didn't end until 2 o'clock in the morning. So anybody who could get into work late came in late. The buildings were 110 stories. They had to go down 70 feet to hit granite. Underneath Manhattan is granite. That's why they can build these structures. But here they had to go down 70 feet. The river used to be right where this street is. So they built what's called slurry walls out into the river. They're hard to explain. And they took all the fill from here, 28 acres of dirt, and they filled it in. And they actually ended up gaining all that land to build. There was a big plaza in the center. They used to have concerts. Had an observation deck on the 110th floor in the restaurant. And then four planes were hijacked by these terrorists, this Islamic terrorists. First one crashed into World Trade Center 1 at 845, then 903. Tower 1, it was 1,300 feet above street level. Tower 2 was 595. I was at home when it happened. They ended up coming in. But I remember thinking that anything above the towers is going to come down, above where the planes hit. You know, I'm thinking of where the other construction. And 2,749 victims were murdered.